Hello and welcome to the Gooner Talk. Back again with you guys for another show, for another episode of our tactical breakdown series, our show in which we look at the players that Arsenal have been linked to, break them down in an analytical and statistical way with the help of some expert insight, and then, of course, get your thoughts in the chat box surrounding those players to come up with a conclusions about whether or not Arsenal should or should not go for them in this summer window. And today we are going to be talking about Fulham centre-back Tosin Adarabioyo, who, of course, joined the club from Manchester City not so long ago. He would be a homegrown asset to the club as well, which is maybe why Arsenal look at him. He's right-footed, plays on the left-hand side next to Joachim Andersen, another player that we've also been linked to. And we're going to look at his statistics, get the eye test, of course, from our expert, and then end the show by getting your thoughts and feelings in the comment section too. If you are enjoying the content on the channel, please make sure you drop a like on the video and subscribe if you are new. We are very close to hitting 22,000 subscribers, so please make sure you are hitting that subscribe button if you are new. And of course, with the hundreds of people that are tuning in for each show, we really appreciate you tuning in. If you could show us that same help by hitting that like button as well, we would appreciate it too. So without further ado, let's crack on with, of course, what we're going to start off with the video, which is looking at our expert insight, which is obviously the main bulk of the start of the view. So we have got a very good guest as per. Same with Razim, Joachim Andersen. We're joined by Henry Hill from Football Daily, a site which I know plenty of you will be looking into. So you can find Henry on Twitter through our associated tweets at the Gooner Talk TV. Make sure you give us a follow over there. But we'll join now Henry, who's going to give us all the insight on, I was going to say Joachim Andersen then, but on Tosin Adarabioyo. So here we go.
Hi, that's Henry from Football Daily, the resident Fulham fan. Last time we talked about Joachim Andersen, and now it looks like Arsenal coming in for our other defender, Tosin Adarabioyo. And I'm quite sad about this one, I won't lie. Big fan of Tosin, what he's done at the club. 23 years old. Cost around £2 million when we picked him up from Manchester City last summer. Obviously with a sell-on clause of about 20%. Which is naturally understandable for a deal almost that good. And Transfermarkt has a value of him for £9 million right now, which is probably be more in sort of an open market. But we'll get on to that a little bit later. But what that does show is what a positive impact that he did make at the club. 31 appearances for Fulham when he came in, helped steer us in the right direction for our impending doom. But him and Anderson played a really strong part of that survival push. It was the attack really that let us down significantly, the creativity up there. And the reason is they work really well as a pair. Anderson tends to push on a bit more, had a higher pressure rate, was more progressive with his passes, was dribbled past more than Tosin. Tosin is more of this kind of solid base at the back. His pass completion rate was very strong at 87%, which is really kind of the level you're looking for a sort of top level defender these days. He's very assured on the ball. 1.7 interceptions per 90 is pretty strong. 1.2 blocks as well. So showing a player that's very positionally sound, sort of comfortable in his own area. Ultimately, don't expect to see a defender like David Luiz bombing forwards, sort of overcommitting himself, because that's just really not how Tosin plays, and that's reflected in his tackling as well. It's not one of his major strengths. 1.3 tackles per 90, and that, I imagine that's probably due to the limitations of his height. He doesn't like to overexpose himself in the tackle, get caught out. But then again, you see the same kind of with Gabriel over at Arsenal. Tackling is not his real strong point either, at 1.1 per 90. Obviously we need to factor in how Fulham and Arsenal play as teams, quite possession heavy, trying to push forward more. But with the Brazilian, you see a player who's more focused on positional discipline than as an all-action defender, and this seems to be what Arteta quite likes. Certainly as Arsenal try and play a bit more an intelligent game. So I think Tosin would probably fit in that regard. And also, Tosin's got a strong backbone as well. He is committed when he goes through. He's not the kind of player to duck out or shy out. He's a pretty strong player, and that's what I think a lot of Fulham fans have appreciated about him. Unsurprisingly, his sort of not redeeming feature, his standout feature is his height, 6'5". No surprises. His clearance is 7.2 per 90, 2.6 aerial duel wins as well. He's a dominant figure in the box, and also pops up in the opposition box as well. Let off more shots than Anderson, although he didn't score this season, so clearly quite a good target. I picked out the Arsenal game where he clearly made an impression in the eyes of Arteta in that 1-1 draw at the Emirates. Absolute robbery of a 7 minutes extra time, wasn't it, at the end? Couldn't believe it. But anyway, he made 8 clearances, 2 interceptions, 1 tackle, 1 block shot, and won all of his individual duels. That kind of encapsulates everything we've talked about there. Strong in the air, positionally intelligent, a really good defender. Should he leave? I don't blame him if he does leave. Apparently there's some kind of clause in his contract now. We're back in the Championship that he could potentially move on. I'd be gutted. Honestly would be. We obviously own him, unlike Anderson. And I think after 2 years at 2 different clubs, to move on to a third, I'm not sure. But, 23, young English defender. And if there is a buyout clause in his contract, as being suggested, I'm not surprised to see Arsenal and Newcastle going in for him. I'm surprised Arsenal maybe are that interested in him. I think they need maybe a more developed level of defender than Tosin. But, English prospect, homegrown prospect, you can't really deny that. So, yeah, I mean, depending on what the price ultimately is, looks like a pretty good deal.
Massive thank you to Henry for helping us out with today's video. Of course, Henry is from the guys over at Football Daily, so make sure you go and check them out. He's a Fulham fan, so he's in the know as regarding Tosin Adarabioyo as a player. So it's interesting to get those thoughts. He's a very young kind of defender for what we want. If you're looking at kind of Arsenal's backline, our oldest defender after this season is going to be Pablo Mari at 27. You've got Holding, who's 26. And you've got Gabriel, 22, turning 23, and Saliba, that's 19, and Chambers, who's around 26 as well. But you haven't got any kind of the really kind of 28-plus experienced heads in the centre of the defence, which is a bit of a concern for me. So why Arsenal are then going for more of these young 20s players in that area, if they are in for a centre-back, which in itself is a bit of a surprise for me. It is strange that we would go for more perspective than we would go for prime in that area. But he is a versatile player. He's a right-footed player that can play on the left or play on the right if he needs to. And has obviously got a lot of pedigree coming from Manchester City too, and have done very well for Fulham despite them going down this season. So there is a lot of things to consider. We obviously need to go into looking at more the statistical side of things, and we're going to do that straight away. And then we'll get some of your thoughts in the chat box afterwards. So we're going to compare him the same way that we compared Anderson with Saliba, Holding, and Mavropanos. So let's start with Tosin. And look at his heat map. As we said, he does play typically on the left-hand side, even though he is right-footed, which shows a little bit of versatility. But what is kind of interesting about him is that he does move forward with the ball. You can see that heat map rising towards the halfway line there, even going into the opposition half at times. Not as much as Holding and Mavropanos and Saliba. And he's more spread across the pitch too. He gets more over to the left, can even deputise on the right if Anderson is the one pushing up. It's a more wider heat map than we have seen from the others. Make of that what you will. Defensive duels, he comes out good in terms of the amount that he's winning. He wins the most defensive duels at 68.7% of the ones that he gets involved in, but he is second least in terms of the frequency of those defensive duels in comparison to the likes of Holding and Mavropanos, who are up there with the 7 points ones. But he's higher than Saliba in both defensive duels won and the amounts that he's getting involved in as well. Aerial duels, he comes out very good. He is a very tall centre-back, so this isn't very surprising, even though his frequency isn't too high. When he is up for them, he does tend to win them, and he's second highest on our list behind Mavropanos at 66.7%. Loose ball duels, we're coming in at 66.7%, which is the highest of the lot again, but only 2.8. I say only, it's the second highest on our list, but it seems like this 2-point area is very kind of common for these centre-backs. But he does win more of the loose ball duels in comparison to anyone else on his competition roster. He intercepts the ball as twice in the second position of our lot as well. Mavropanos coming out very well at 8.03, but 6.55 interceptions is good. That probably comes down to the fact, in linking into the heat map that we looked at earlier, that he spreads himself across the pitch, can move into those central areas to cut those passing lanes and intercept passes really well. Losses, he comes out quite well in. I don't know why Anderson is the picture there. That's me going, not changing the picture. But I have changed the stat, even though there's a picture of Anderson there at 7.02, 56.7 there. That's really frustrated me. You can tell I did this the last few minutes. In terms of recoveries, we got 10.39, 12.1% of those being in the opposition half, but he does come out quite well over 10. It's not as high as Saliba, not as high as Mavropanos, but it's still over 10, which is a really good recovery rating, especially when he only loses the ball 7 times. Clearances to fouls, 4.77. Clearances per match is, again, the highest on our list, and he's fouling the least. He's not the type that does dive into those challenges, and when he does, he tends to win the ball, which is showing his good tackling statistics there too. Passing-wise, we move into these stats. 88.9% passing accuracy is the third highest on our list, a lot higher than Mavropanos, but he does pass the least frequently. So if Arteta wants a centre-back that is high in passes and accuracy, Tosin probably isn't the guy on the list to choose. Long passes, he makes 6, which is the second highest, but his accuracy is also in that region too with 55.1%. But what's disappointing about these long passing statistics is they're not as progressive as the others on the list. Only 4.8 passes into the final third, and when he does it, it is the lowest accuracy. Saliba comes out really well in this stat here with 74.3% passing accuracy into the final third, the attacking third of the pitch, and a much higher frequency than Tosin. And Tosin doesn't particularly come out as a progressive passer as a centre-back, and we'd be more your astute, disciplined, tackling type of guy in that field. Last statistic we're going to look at is shooting. He is very tall as for a centre-back, and so unsurprisingly, you do see him winning quite a lot of shots in the box from corners, and when he does, they do tend to go on target. He has one of the better shooting ratios of all of the defenders that we got on this list if we did want someone that was a bit of a threat in the box from those set pieces. So there's all of the statistical comparisons for Tosin in comparison to Saliba and Holding and Mavropanos, but I am interested as to what you guys think in the chat box. Vinny says, hit a like, boys, 124 watching, but just 21 likes. Come on, let's hit that like button, guys. Help us get out the videos, help more people see these and get educated about Arsenal's transfer targets throughout the window. Seng says, why do we talk about Tosin? Arsenal, we have 8 defenders plus Tosin, then we have 9. Why is Arteta stubborn for that player? The problem is our strikers don't score enough. That's why we are 10 places down in the table. It's not a bad point when you consider that Arsenal have one of the best defensive records in the league. What I would be looking at, though, is why we aren't scoring the goals. It doesn't actually come down to the strikers for me. It is more down to the chance creation of how many we're making. Those chances that are not frequent enough. And that's why I'm hoping that Arsenal are going to get linked with plenty of creative attacking midfielders as we go throughout the summer. Jack Elliott says, we have Gabriel and Pablo Mari, who are both left-footed centre-backs. Does this mean Mari would be on his way out if we went for Tosin? I wouldn't necessarily mean it would do. I think you'd be looking at maybe not offering someone like Chambers a new contract. This link is very loose to me, even though it's come forward a couple of days ago. I don't see it as a real kind of starter. But of course, we're always going to cover the players that Arsenal get linked to so that you know and you can make your decisions about these guys before anyone else. Top Tecker says, for me, Saliba needs to be integrated. And I agree with him, into the starting lineup. I think that needs to happen as quickly as possible. It's what we need to happen so we can start developing him and seeing what he can get out of the team. Mood says, we should have gotten Lewis Dunk some time ago. Do you think that he would be a good buy? I think he would cost you a fair amount of money, and I think that if you're going to go for a centre-back on that kind of price range, it should be someone of the level of Ruben Diaz and Van Dijk. And I know that he wouldn't cost necessarily as much as them, but if we're going to go and sign a real prime centre-back that's going to have a transformative impact on the team, you need to be aiming much, much higher than you are when you're seeing him move there. I think that's probably the way that we'd be looking at it. Manu says, to be fair, with Louise leaving, we need some more danger in the corners, but saying that, we can't even clear the first post most of the time, which is very, very difficult to do. Pat Moyle says, he does not seem to be much better than what we have. It would be interesting, of course, to see his statistics against a top centre-back, which, of course, is an interesting point when you consider comparisons with top centre-backs. The reason why I don't tend to do that really is because situations are different, and I want to see players that are an upgrade on what we've already got. Yes, I think that we should look at players with the barometer of saying, do they get into the top 6 teams? If they do get into the top 6 teams, then we're going to help ourselves closing that gap between us and them. But they always need to be, as a minimum, an upgrade on the players that we currently have. And it's very difficult to compare statistics of players that are in different situations, different scenarios. And so the closest and the riskiest part of this is just comparing them where they are to the players that we currently have. Vinny says, next season, we have less games and have 5 centre-halves in the first team squad in Marie, Gabriel, Saliba, Holding and Chambers, 3 of which are homegrown. Centre-back is the only position, bar maybe the wing area, where we are set and we are okay. Ed says his skill set seems like something we could use, but it feels like a new selection headache next year. Steve Stone says, sorry, Vinny, I consider myself told off. I do need reminding, though. It's an age thing. I've liked the video now. Good stuff, Steve. Much appreciated. Kevin says, think if we sign a centre-back, we need experience to lead and teach Gabriel and Saliba. I definitely fall into this kind of thinking, is that if we're going to go for a centre-back, I'd much rather see a much more experienced player come in and fill that role in the team. Tim Jallo says our striker aren't scoring because they are busy max sprinting into defences. Also a reason we're not leaking goals, unlike Unai Emery. This is defensive improvement under Arteta. I do think that, but I think it's more down to chance creation while we're not scoring. We're not creating enough chances in games. We're not dominating games in the final third. We get to kind of the end of the middle territory on the pitch, and then we really struggle to find those key final balls and key passes and to really overload the box at times. Doesn't seem to be enough players. And we end up playing with like 3 or 4 in the final third when it needs to be more 5 or 6. Pushing forwards, including the fullbacks, including your pivot players. Yes, you can get caught sometimes, and that can happen, but the kind of the tactic would be is that you overload so much is that you're able to really kind of press them to a point where they're conceding the chances and they are pinned back in their own half. Even if the ball drops out, you've got your centre-backs that are pushed fairly high up to then retrieve the possession and then go again and attack again to really pin them into their own box. We don't tend to do that as much these days and really struggle for numbers when it comes to our chance creation. Joshua says, Tom, thanks for the education this morning. Sell Eddie Reese and sell all the rest of them. I thought they were going to be in the under 21s. No problem, Joshua. It's always good to question me on things because I am wrong, believe it or not, now and again. Daniel Bell says, do you think Arsenal's transfer philosophy is changing, looking at a more affordable Prem proven players? I don't know if all of them are going to be necessarily affordable, but I think the way that we're looking seemingly at more Prem-proven players, we are certainly looking at someone like Max Aarons. That is for sure. The club are interested in him. Seemingly Tosin is another one on the list. Basuma, of course, too. I like the way that this is moving. I think is the way that Arsenal need to move in the market, is go down the route of signing the players that are going to ultimately be already transitioned and ready to play in the Premier League, rather than allowing for a transition season like you might see with what we did with Lacazette, etc. And that's a bit of a problem. Azraf says, Tom, I heard on Twitter, which is always a tricky place to hear some really solid information, that Arsenal have signed Basuma for 35 million euros. And he has signed a deal until 2025. And only the personal details are left to complete. Have you heard any rumours on Basuma? Honestly, Azraf, I think I know who you're talking about who's reported that. And if I am thinking of the same person, I don't believe they're a very highly followed person. I think they're still less than 10,000 followers. Not that that means anything, but it is a bit of an indication sometimes that there are accounts out there that do like to kind of throw enough you-know-what at a wall and see what sticks, if you know what I mean. And I feel like that's very much the case with the account that I saw that tweet from. From my end of things, I've heard nothing. And the few things that I managed to seep through the cracks, I haven't heard anything about a bid being made. All I've heard is that Arsenal are certainly interested in Basuma, and he's someone that is on their list of players. They have got basically a plan A, B, C, D, and so on for if these situations don't work, they can go on to the next one. Arsenal don't want a repeat of the window last year where they left it to the last minute to go and get Thomas Partey. They want to get these deals done quickly. We just got to see if that is delivered now. That's ultimate. But no, I haven't heard anything about a Basuma bid going in whatsoever. Tony says, the reason we create less goal chances is our midfield. When we win the ball, it is always played backwards and we always have to face a set defence. We are quite slow, I feel, in our transitions, especially on the pitch. And I thought Partey would really help with the speed of that, but it hasn't necessarily. Anyway, I feel like we're going on a little bit of a tangent now with the questions. So I am going to curtail the video there. Thank you ever so much for everyone that's tuned in today. Of course, Arsenal do play later on this evening, 7 o'clock kickoff at Crystal Palace for a very important match if we've got any hope of getting into the top 4, not top 4, what am I talking about? Top 7 this season is what you got to hope for, even if you want that Europa Conference League. But in terms of the Raw Reaction show, we obviously usually do a show straight after the games. I am working, as I do on a Wednesday, until 11 o'clock. I am going to try and do a Raw Reaction show at 11 7 p.m. UK time. So make sure you tune in for that if you are around to watch that for the reaction to the game. But there won't be one straight afterwards. It's not going to be till about 11 p.m. this evening. So make sure you do tune in for that. But if you're not, we'll be back tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. for the latest Arsenal transfer show to keep you up to date with all the latest information. I'm hoping to give you a Sander Berg tactical breakdown within the next few days or so. I just need to sort out some expert insight, and then we're going to roll on that. But other than that, it's been an absolute pleasure, guys, as always. Make sure you drop a like on the video and subscribe. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I'll see you again very, very soon. And as always, up the Arsenal.